Welcome to Missiongathering Charlotte. This community is for you. If you grew up in the church and have lost your faith, if you are in a moment of deconstruction or reconstruction, if scandals, politics, and hate have led you into doubt, if the stories of this faith raise doubts and curiosity in you, our time together is not about trying to fix you. You are not broken. Our journey in this life is not about erasing doubt, but embracing them. For it is only on the darkest night we can see the stars. Life's journey is hard enough, so we don't think you should have to make this journey alone. So if you are Asian, Latinx, Black or White, Indigenous, if you are male or female, trans or non-binary, if you are 3 days old, 30 years old, or 103 years old, if you've never stepped foot in a church, or if you are Buddhist, Roman Catholic, agnostic, or are a lifelong evangelical, if you are single, married, divorced, separated, or partnered, if you are straight, gay, lesbian, asexual, or bisexual, if you are a Republican, Democrat, independent, socialist, or not registered to vote, if you have or had addictions, phobias, abortions, or a criminal record, if you own your home, rent, live with your parents, or are homeless, if you are fully abled, disabled, or a person of differing abilities. You are welcome to join us on this journey, to share our sacred meal at the table of grace. Happy Sunday, and welcome one and all.
No conditions, you are loved. We cannot say enough. You completely belong. No, we cannot say it enough. You are saved to be who you are. No, we cannot say it enough. So come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table. Come to the table, just as you are. No exceptions, welcome home. We cannot say it enough. You're not on this road alone. No, we cannot say it enough. Nothing to prove, you can let down your guard. We cannot say it enough. So come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table. Come to the table, just as you are. Come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table, just as you are. Just as you are. Just as you are. There's no fear, no fear in love. There's no fear, no fear in love. You are saved to be who you are. Nothing to prove, you can let down your guard. And come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table. Come to the table, just as you are. And come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table, there is a place for you. Come to the table, just as you are. Just as you are. Just as you are. Just as you are. just as you are.
Hey, Missiongathering. Hey, friends. This is Pastor Andrew here. And this is our portion where we worship God through giving. Not because God needs our money, but because we need it. We need it to do the things that we function within the society of declaring that we are standing for the rights of women and all who can become pregnant. That we're standing for the rights of queer and LGBTQ people. That we are standing up and saying that Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, and that we need to seek solutions and healing that actually cause and affect change. I know, it seems like there's so many things to donate to right now. You're probably getting 10 or 12 text messages a day asking you to donate to a political campaign. And if that's something you want to do, awesome. But if this is something meaningful in your life too, I want to ask maybe if you can give today. We have the Cash App, the Venmo, the website link posted up here in the video. When you give that money, it helps us to do all the things that we do. Things like Rock Hill Pride, Charlotte Pride, things like feeding our neighbors, things like keeping this space open so that we can have a safe sanctuary for those who have been rejected by the world or those who are in danger in other places. This is a radical community, and we stand in radical solidarity with so many. So your gifts are welcome, whether they be monetary, whether they be through your support of continuing to follow and reach out to us and telling us that you're a part of this, whether your gifts are simply being a part of your own community, wherever you're at, and making this world a little bit better, one day at a time. So for your gifts, I offer this prayer of dedication and thanksgiving. God, you send us out into this world to be with and learn and know you more and more. Allow these gifts to be used for your purposes of greater freedom, greater love, greater inclusion. May we continue to be your sheep. May you continue to protect us from the wolves. In the name of Jesus the Christ, amen. This is what the Lord showed me. The Lord was standing by a wall with a plumb line in their hand. The Lord said to me, Amos, what do you see? A plumb line, I said. Then the Lord said, see, I am setting a plumb line in the middle of my people Israel. I will never again forgive them. The shrines of Isaac will be made desolate, and the holy places of Israel will be laid waste. And I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. Then Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, reported to Israel's king Jeroboam, Amos has plotted against you within the house of Israel. The land isn't able to cope with everything that he is saying. Amos has said Jeroboam will die by the sword, and Israel will be forced out of its land. Amaziah said to Amos, you who see things, go run away to the land of Judah. Eat your bread there and prophesy there, but never again prophesy at Bethel, for it is the king's holy place and his royal house. Amos answered Amaziah, I am not a prophet, nor am I a prophet's son, but I am a shepherd and trimmer of sycamore trees. But the Lord took me from the shepherding flock, and the Lord said to me, go prophesy to my people Israel. Now hear the Lord's word. You say, don't prophesy against Israel, and don't preach against the house of Isaac. Therefore the Lord proclaims, your wife will become a prostitute in the city, and your sons and daughters will fall by the sword, and your land will be measured and divided up. You yourself will die in an unclean land, and Israel will be surely taken away from its land. Amos chapter 7, verses 7 through 17, Common English Bible translation, the Word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So today's Bible passage is from the book of Amos. And Amos is a shepherd and a fig farmer who lives on the border between two kingdoms. Amos is called by God to cross over from the southern kingdom of Judah and go and preach a warning to the people of the northern kingdom of Israel. The problem going on with Israel, according to Amos, is that the people with all of the power, with all of the money, with all of the wealth, and all of the privilege, they're really religious, like super pious. They give 10% or more of everything that they earn back to the temple. They make larger sacrifices than they have to make. And by all accounts, they seem to be doing all of the right things and following all of the religious laws that they're supposed to be following. But Amos sees a problem with this. According to Amos in his message from God, none of this religiosity, none of this temple worship, none of these things that these elites are doing matters a dang thing. Because the elites and all of their cronies, they keep all of their religious expectations. Like, they do everything they're supposed to do at what we could maybe call church, even though it's not really church. But while they do it, in their day-to-day lives, all of that wealth, all of those riches that they've amassed, they get it from exploiting the poor. See, everything seems like it's going really well in the northern kingdom of Israel. The economy is booming, the military is at the height of its power, and their king has consolidated his rule to where there's peace among them. According to all of the metrics, Israel is doing great. They've even begun the conquest of their neighbors, taking cities like Damascus for their own. But Amos says that God sees through all of that. That underneath all of it, there's something truly rotten. Something's festering there. And you see, there's two kingdoms at this point, right? Because Israel had broken off from the southern kingdom of Judah over conflict about taxes, over why the rich had to pay so many taxes. It kind of sounds like a country we all know about a group of people that rebel against a king because they don't want to pay taxes. And they spent years working to become a powerful kingdom. But in order to become powerful and in order to be more like how their neighbors operated, the king had to do some things. The kings, they seized the ancestral lands of the people living in the north, the tribes in the north, and they gave them to those who were loyal to the king. They created larger farms and vineyards for them to make themselves money and for them to be able to give money to the king. But that left people with no land to grow food and no way to support themselves and their families, so they had to sell themselves into debt slavery just to eat. Poor women and girls who couldn't find work had to turn to sex work in order to survive and eat. You see, Israel seemed like everything was going okay, but all the wealth had been concentrated at the top, and it was trickled down by the will of the rich and the powerful to all of those underneath them. And the king and the rich, they gave a lot of money to that temple at Bethel. So the priests there, they felt indebted to the king and all of his cronies, all of his court, all of his friends. So then this upstart, right? This upstart from a kingdom that wasn't doing so well at the time, from Judah, named Amos, a backwoods farmer that smelled like sheep and figs, comes out preaching day in and day out about what the coming disaster will be from this system that the king had created. And so the priest, who's shown that his loyalty is to the king and not to God and not to the people for sure, the priest comes out and tells him to go home. And then in verse 13, something interesting happens, right? The temple of the northern kingdom is in a place called Bethel. And Bethel is Hebrew for the house of God. But the priest here, he calls the temple the king's royal house. So he takes the house of God and he makes it the house of the state, the house of the king. And so then Amos goes off. I mean, like, how could you not go off on that? I get it. in an age of Christian nationalism, there's a lot of people that wouldn't go off. But there's a reason we don't have American flags in our sanctuary. There's a reason that we don't celebrate the imperial holidays or the national holidays, and we stick to the Christian holidays. And that's because this is supposed to be the house of God that we worship in. And God has no borders or boundaries or allegiances to flags or countries. So Amos is mad because God is God. God is God of everyone, not just of the king. The king does not control God. And then we get this harsh judgment passage. And that can be really hard for us. That can be something that's super hard for all of us that are progressives, and we see God in such a different way. But as I was reading it over and over, what I found interesting about the judgment is what Amos declares is going to happen is what the rich and elites had already been doing to the poor of their country and the poor in other people's countries. You see, rotten systems for a while, they will shoot up looking like prosperity. There will be all these things that we can talk about saying, oh, look, the economy's doing well because of the stock market. Or everything's great because the prices of gas are low. Or interest rates are low. Brings prosperity really quickly for the few and brings them a lot of prosperity. But at the heart of rotten systems is misery and servitude for the masses who aren't at the top. But rotten systems have never been built to survive. They decay and decompose from the inside out. And that's because they go against the code that the Creator has written into our delicate, interdependent ecosystem. Everything depends on everything else. And when we think that there's an exception to that rule, the rot begins to creep in. And I feel like we're living in a moment much like the one that Amos was living in. We have a generation who's enslaved to debt and disinherited by their parents and their grandparents, with less opportunities for wealth, less opportunities to prosper, and they're turning away from church, finding new ways to connect to the divine, just like the poor people of the kingdom of Israel were turning to idols of other countries, worshiping foreign gods. Because why wouldn't they? If the church only seems to be for the elites and the rich, or the people that pledge allegiance to a country over God, then why not find new ways to connect with the divine? I don't blame anybody for doing that. Then other folks are just simply swearing off faith altogether because they've been conned by people who were out to get their money or out to get their time or to use them and abuse them for power or influence. We're seeing in our land that minority religious groups are being exceptionally privileged. White Christian nationalism is being exceptionally privileged over religious pluralism, over the freedom to worship God how the Spirit calls us. Instead, we're seeing it enshrined that white Christian nationalist ideas, this crusader mentality, gets put to the forefront and privileged within our society, even by the highest court in our land. That same court is saying that corporations and energy companies are being given priority over our survival as a species and the survival of our creature kindred. We don't survive without biodiversity, and climate change is a real thing that will kill biodiversity and ultimately kill us. The status of fetuses and their rights have been prioritized and elevated over those whose wombs can carry them. And they cry that it is about children, while weapons of mass destruction and death have been given more rights than the school children that they shoot down, than the parade goers that they're murdered by. It seems bleak. I know it all seems bleak. But Amos doesn't go there just to pass judgment. Amos pleads with God. Amos pleads with the people to turn back, to love good. So we don't have to go the same way that ancient Israel did. There are pathways to a better future for everyone. And that pathway is not more prayer in schools. That pathway is not making people go to church. like that'll somehow fix everything. The pathway is what it's always been. It's caring for the poor and the marginalized. It's making sure that our laws, both in writing and enforcement, are equitable to all people and not just privileging a few to make money off of the laws and to exploit the poor. It's learning to treat all of our society as one organism, as something that has to be cultivated and grown for the good of all and not just the few. But to do that, it requires sacrifices, and not big religious sacrifices, not tithes to someone who wants to buy a jet because he's afraid of demons. No, it takes real sacrifice. Because it means that some of us, me and you, probably, we have to sacrifice some of our comfort for discomfort. We have to swap some of our ignorance for enlightenment. We have to change our own priorities and prosperity from being focused on ourselves to being focused on the prosperity and the priorities for the whole community. And that might be scary to you. Because for those of us who have long been given preferential treatment, giving up anything feels like punishment. But for those who have lived way too long without, who have gone way too long sacrificing their bodies and their lives to a machine meant to churn out wealth for the rich and the powerful, the things that we have to do will feel like liberation. We have a choice. We have a choice because God does not desire our suffering. God doesn't cause our suffering. God suffers with us, alongside us, as one who truly knows what we are feeling and going through. But God gives us a choice. We can choose to be a part of our salvation, or we can continue to choose to be a part of our own destruction. So may you choose life today. May you choose to love life, all of the people and creatures and plants that are alive around you, to take in that gift. And may we all learn to love good more than we hate evil, more than we decry the bad, to relish and celebrate in the good. So that in the words of Amos, so that justice will roll down like heavy waters and righteousness like a stream. We can do it if we choose to do it. So Missiongathering friends, may you choose life.